Hi everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. In this video, I am going to discuss about the pitfalls of data representation. So I identified 5 pitfalls of data visualization. So once we are going to identify this data visualization, so how we're going to avoid the pitfalls, what I'm going to get while presenting this data. So just now in previous video I discussed so many things about the different types of charts. So previously, initially what we are going to have should be the data, and this data is going to be identified what are the various sources of this data. So sources. So once these sources is identified, again the sources will be of different types like primary sources and then secondary sources. So again, I discussed in previous video what are the various types of data. So again, this data will be of different types like qualitative, and second one is that quantitative. And if I'm going quantitative means that we are going to have some measures, whereas qualitative means there should not be any kind of measures here. So like this, we have to identify again this qualitative data and quantitative data is further divided into nominal, ordinal, ratio, scale. Like this, we can be able to have different types of data. So once the data is identified from the source as well as what type of data it is, we have to be identified. So once that one, then we have to be sure that which shot should be the best to present the view of the data. So for that we are going to have different types of charts like bar chart, and similarly are going to have line chart, and similarly are going to have scatter plot and pie diagram, and different types of 2D and 3-dimensional charts, right? So once this data is going to be visualized in different types of charts, so what we have to do is that we have to identify what are the drawbacks and while presenting the visualization. So for that, what we have to do is so we should able to work directly with the data what we are going to see, and we should able to interact the visuals to dig deeper, and we can navigate through all the information like never before. So these are the things we have to be very familiar while seeing the data in the form of visualization. So we should without proper working on the data what it is, if I'm going to present, that should be a very difficult one. And so with interaction should also be good. So what are the audience or guess what we are going to see the visuals, the interaction should be very good, and should also be leads to the deeper analysis of the data and navigating the information so in such a way that it should not be looks like never before. So and then we have to be interact the data what is going to be visualized should be as quickly as possible, and then it should be leads to insight of the data visualization. So this should be very important. So whatever the data we are showing, that should be the audience, or it may be guess what we have. So the seeing the visualization of this should be very clear, and we should also lead to what should be the insight of the data visualization. So at all once that may be that very complex data should becomes clearer. That means normally the simple data can able to view very simply and then easily understood by the users. but here the data what you are going to be shown should be the complex one. So that complex data should be make it understandable, very clear to the audience. That should be the purpose of the data visualization. So the so that what we're going to see that is, so in order to understand that complex data, so can able to see what should be the outliers, patterns, trends, and correlations that just are not visible in the form of simply rows and columns. So normally before going to represent the data, so this is the data what we are going to get initially from this one of the source, and this data is going to represent the form of tables here. So from that tables, what we are going to, we have to be shown in the form of diagrams, what we call. So instead of studying this raw data, it should be difficult to understand, right? So what I'm doing by analyzing this data, I'm going to represent in the form of rows and then columns. So what we call it as tables here. So instead of by understanding these tables, by seeing the rows and columns, it should be a little bit difficult to understand what it is. So if the same thing, if I'm going to represent the form of a diagram like um, bar chart and then line graph and then sorry pie diagram like this, so that the audience can able to understand what the data and how much in percentage data is there and what is this data is meant for, like this can able to identify very clearly. So by seeing this picture, can able to a picture can able to make a worth of 1,000 words. So by seeing this picture, can able to write so many things. It should be that more than 1,000 words here. So, but some experience that the benefits of the data visualization means there should be some to how to avoid some of the pitfalls of that one. So that should be have to be very clear. So, what are those pitfalls that may be arising while visualizing the data? We'll see now. So, normally you're going to have 5 pitfalls of the data visualization. So, very first thing should be color obtuse, and then misuse of pie charts and visual clutter, and then poor design, and then bad data. So these are the things which may be difficult to understand for any kind of person for the data what he is visualization. So if we are going to avoid this kind of pitfalls of data visualization, it should be very better for that. So very first thing is that color obtuse. So color obtuse should be hard to consider, and misuse of pie charts, visual clutter, and then poor design and bad data. So these are the things which should be very uh, difficult or disadvantages of this data visualization. So very first pitfall is that color obtuse. So what is that mean here is, so the color has to place, but we should not avoid overdo it in the data visualization. But the wrong color may also leads to confusion or even worse and misinterpretation as well. So the data visualization in that the color plays a very important role. Suppose normally it should be red and it should be yellow and then green normally. So instead of that, if I'm going to use some little bit pink and then light blue and then some other color like light yellow, it may be lead some little bit confusion. So what it is, so normally in traffic signals where all the time it should be red, yellow and green color. So if I'm instead of red, I'm going to use pink, and if I'm going to use some other blue here, and it should be some other green here, light green here. So what will happen, so that maybe leads to understand how misleading should be happening here. So in the similarly, while presenting the data, the color plays an important role and should be if, but we should be overdoing data visualization should not be preferable one. And the color wrong color also leads to confusion, even if worse and misinterpretation. And then, so what is the tip you have to be follow for avoiding this color abuse? That so analysis always come first. So So despite what you are banning, the report might say that the brand colors are often not the best choice of visualization, and they consider the color blind and use the shapes and color that are easiest for the most of the people to see, and don't rely on the color alone to convey the meaning. So these are the tips we have to be followed for the colors. Just carefully chosen that. So all the time the analysis should be comes from. So based on analysis also have to be distribute the colors, and more often that the branded colors are not suitable for the choice of visualization, and consider that the color blind and use shapes and the color that are the easiest for the people, most of the people to see that, and so don't rely on color alone to convey the meaning. And second one, so what should be the another disadvantage of data visualization is that misuse of pie charts. So here, so there are so many kind of applications. So many of the people by seeing this application, right? So many of them go for the bar charts. So similar information can also be represented in the form of line chart as well. At the same time, where I can able to represent in the form of pie diagram also. But so what should be the best suitable application of the pie chart? It is difficult to understand. So for that, what I'm going to see that we have to be very careful the information into the pie chart, and big pictures may also get lost of information. So similarly, the too much detail leaves you understand audience feeling that unsatisfied and confused also. So avoiding that such a pie chart side by side, it should be an accurate way to compare the data as well. So let's take an example. So I represent the number of items that are purchased in particular X shop here. And so in this egg shop, so the number of items that will be item 2, 3, 4. So this should be the distribution of that items selling in that X shop. So same thing if I'm going to represent here, though I can able to show in the form of line chart as well. Okay. So similar thing where can able to represent the form of pie diagram also. 25% item 1, and second item is 15%, item 3 is 20%, item 4 10%. Like this I can able to show it. So the same thing we can able to represent should be done in different ways. So but we have to identify whether it is a pie chart is going to be fit suitable for that application or not. We have to be very careful. So the comparison of the one pie chart to the another pie chart will also may leads to the misleading of proper analysis of the data. Next one is that. So what is the tip we have to be follow for using the pie charts for the right data is that. So all the time the pie chart should be work best for the limited data sets, and that let you easily distinguish each slice of pie, and use pie charts to compare the parts of whole. Don't use them to compare the different sets of the data, and order your slices from largest to smallest for easier comparison. So the pie chart should be works best for the limited data sets only. Is large, so what will happen? And then so in this way the pie charts looks like, and the percentage composition of each and every sector of the pie graph looks to be very difficult, and then difficult to understand also. So for that what we have to do is, so all the time the tip is that so the pie chart should be works best for the limited data sets only, and using this pie chart you can also compare the parts at a whole, but don't use them to compare the different sets of the data. So using this pie chart you can able to represent the various parts at a time as a whole, but so it is not suitable for comparing the different data sets here. So order your slice from largest to smallest for the easiest comparison. Suppose if I'm going to go for the comparison for the smaller data set with the under pie set, so it should be uh, the order what we are going to compare should be largest to the smallest one. So the largest is going to be take first and the next largest level is going to be compared. Like this we can able to compare. So then that should be the so that what will happen here is the data what we are going to visualize should be very better. And visual clutter is another pitfall of the data visualization. So here the more making discoveries in a cluttered visualization is like finding the needle in a haystack. Okay, so how this means, so making the discoveries in the cluttered visualization means that so finding a needle in a haystack. So here what I have to do is that so here too much of information defeat the purpose of the clarity. So if I'm going to show this but we're going to show the most of the information here, so it should be uh, difficult to understand. At the same time the we should also defeat the purpose of the clarity as well, and unnecessary elements or chart junk or covered up visualization obscure meaning and may leads to inaccurate conclusions also. Okay, so these are the things we have to be remembered. So while visualizing the data, so unnecessary elements such as junk and then close crowd of visualization and obscure meaning, these and all may leads to the inaccurate conclusion of the data visualization as well. So what are the tips we have to be follow for make it simple here? So what I'm going to do is so limit the number of KPIs in a dashboard to 9 or less, and too many indicators are distracting, and keep the visualization simple. So the less there is no to interpret and easier to understand. So what is the less data if I'm going to take, that should be easy to interpret, but it also easy to understand as well. So if your looks cluttered, that try to a different format, and then cleanest format is usually the best. Okay, the cleanest format is usually the best thing. So keep it simple is the thing. For that, what I am going to do that is that so make the visualization clutter. So that means if I'm going to represent the more data, so try for a different format so that the cleanest format is only the thing to visualize the best thing. And next pitfall is that poor design. So the design is not just like what it looks like, feel like, and the design is how it works here. Okay, so the design is not just what it looks like, feels like. The design shape that is how it works. So for that, just because a visualization is beautiful to look and does not mean its effect, but so the effective visualization incorporate the best design practices to enhance the communication of the data. Okay, so the effective visualizations incorporate the design best practice to enhance the communication of the data. So normally, seeing by seeing this, so all the time visualizations also the very looks beautiful, but it not is not that much effective. So what I'm going to do is we have to incorporate some of the best practices to enhance the communication of the data. So for this, what are the tips you have to be follow for that? So here, so don't just create the visuals and dashboards. So what you have to do, you have to just design them. So that means how it should be work. So by make use of enlisting these professional designers. So what you have to do, the design should be looks very beautiful. At the same time, should also be worked with the designer to ensure the visualization is as effective as possible. So by seeing this design is not the thing, so how it will work and how this the visualization should be is effective thing or not. So similarly, if I'm going to take the bad thing, bad data, so Even the bad data can also be represented very beautifully through the design, but that is not the content here. So the design should be available only for the good data and or effective data. Okay, then only the visualization should be very beautiful, and we should be make use of this professional designers to make the visualization should be very effective. And fifth pitfall, what I'm going to do, that is the bad data, what I just said. So normally this great visualization should be start with the great data. So all the time, if the visualization should looks good, better with the great data only. But if your visualization reveals the unexpected results, you may be the victim of the bad data. And so don't let your visualization become the scapegoat for the bad data. So, so for the bad data, it is strictly not permitted for visualization. So great visualization should be start with the great data only. And if your visualization reveals the unexpected results, so what will happen means that you may be the victim of the bad data. And so what you have to do is also don't let your visualizations become the scapegoat for the bad data. So for this, what are the tips we have to be follow for the spot and correcting the data issues early? So for that, so we have to use the charts to spot issues with the data, and you should also be address the issues before presenting the data, and don't let your visualization take the blame for the bad information. So understand the difference between the unexpected discovery and the data issue. So by following these tips, you can able to the fifth pitfall, that should be the bad data, right? So with this bad data, so what will happen? So what are the tips you have to be follow for that is, so use your charts uh, for showing the data, and address the issues before presenting the data. So don't let the visualization take blame for bad information as well, and understand the difference between this unexpected discovery and the data issue. So these are the things we have to be follow for the various pitfalls of the data visualization. Okay, so here, so we in this video I covered the so many um, pitfalls, or it may be a disadvantages of the data visualization. So for that, here I discuss the 5 pitfalls of the data visualization. So very first thing is the color abuse and misuse of pie charts and visual clutter, poor design, and the bad data. So these are the 5 disadvantages of the data visualization. So color abuse. So very first thing that, so the color should be plays a vital role in the data visualization, and so the wrong color may also lead to confusion and then even worse or misinterpretation as well. So what the tips you have to be follow is that, so all the time the analysis could come from based on that. So the branded colors should not be often for the choice of visualization, and consider the color blind. So use shapes and colors that are the easiest for the most people to see, and don't rely on the color alone with to convey meaning. And second pitfall is that the misuse of pie chart. So pie charts, so we're going to use, so in while using this pie chart, it should be only suitable for the limited number of data sets, and it's not suitable for the larger data sets here. And the comparison between the two data sets should also not be preferable. So if it is going to have the more number of data sets, the percentage is going to be uh, difficult to compare with the under pie chart. So at the time, what we're going to do, so we have to be uh, actual way to compare the data. So that is the pitfall. So how are we going to avoid that? So the pie chart should be works best for the limited data sets, and then you compare the two pie charts at a time for the whole data. That is the only way to comparing, and each and every slice, if I'm going to compare, then it should be largest to smallest for the easy confirmation. And pitfall 3 is that visual clutter. So making the discoveries visual cluttered visualization like finding a needle hashtag. And for that, so for what we have to do, so unnecessary or too much information was going to post on the data visualization, so it should may also lead to the inaccurate conclusions. And so like the number of the tips what we have to say is that, so keep the visualization simple and less to interpret and easier to understand. So if the visuals looks like a clutter way, and the clearest part is only the best way to visualize. And pitfall 4 is the poor design. So the design is not just like what it looks like and feel like, but the design is that how it works here. So because the visualization should be a beautiful artwork and does not mean the effective, but effective visualization incorporate the design best practices to enhance the communication of the data. So enlisting the professional designers is the tip we have to follow for the good design. And pitfall or last one is that bad data. So the greater visualization should be start with the greater, not for the bad data. So if the visualization reveals the unexpected error, then it should may be a victim of the data. And so don't let the visualization become the scatterplot of the bad data. So the tip for that is that use the charts to spot the issues of the data, and don't let the visualization should be blame of bad information, and understand the difference between unexpected discovery and the data issue. So these are the tips you have to avoid bad data. Thank you.
Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.